Every day you wake up, God gives you another opportunity to walk in his favor. But favor doesn't just fall on you, it flows through alignment. You can't walk in divine favor while living out of divine order. The moment you align your thoughts, your heart, and your actions with God's word, the door of favor begins to open. Some people are praying for open doors while standing in disobedience. But when you step into alignment with his will, the right doors open without force, without striving, without manipulation. God's favor isn't random. It's a response to order. He said, the steps of a righteous man are ordered by the Lord, not the leaps, not the sprints, the steps. That means every single movement you take, every small act of obedience is being directed by divine design. You might not see the full picture yet, but God already wrote it. Your job is to take the step. His job is to establish it. When you let God order your steps, you stop comparing your journey to someone else's. You realize success is not a race, it's an assignment. Someone else's pace doesn't determine your progress because God's plan for your life is custom made. The reason comparison kills destiny is because you can't follow God's map while looking at another person's path. So instead of asking, when will it happen for me? Start saying, God, establish my steps today. The timing belongs to him. The progress belongs to him. The favor flows when you move in faith, not fear. Divine timing requires trust. Some of you are frustrated because what you prayed for hasn't shown up yet. But let me tell you something. God's delay is not denial. It's divine development. He's preparing what you're praying for, but he's also preparing you for what you prayed for. You can't receive a blessing that your character can't carry. So when God slows you down, it's not to punish you. It's to strengthen your foundation. Because if you rush to a position your spirit isn't ready for, the weight of it will crush you. Trust God's pace. Trust his process. Trust his favor to carry you where your own strength can't. Favor turns effort into excellence. You can work hard all your life and still live beneath your potential if you don't have favor. Favor takes what should have taken years and does it in months. Favor puts your name in rooms you've never walked into. Favor qualifies you for things you weren't even trained for. When God's favor is upon your life, what others fight for begins to flow towards you. That doesn't mean you stop working. It means your work becomes worship, every effort you make under. Divine favor carries exponential results. The world calls it luck, but believers know it's grace multiplied. But here's the secret. Favor doesn't just appear, it's activated through relationship. Prayer is not begging God to move, it's positioning yourself to receive his direction. When you begin your morning with prayer, you're not just talking to God, you're aligning your spirit with heaven's strategy. That's why your morning matters. Before you check your phone, before you scroll through messages, before you chase after the day's demands, pause, pray, say, Lord, establish my steps today. Let your favor go before me. Let every conversation, every opportunity, and every challenge today be guided by your hand. That one prayer can redirect your entire day, because when you invite God into your morning, you give him permission to manage your momentum. And I want you to understand this. You don't have to chase success when God establishes your steps. The world is chasing fame, money, and validation, but you are being established in purpose, peace, and favor. Success built by striving crumbles under pressure, but success established by favor stands the test of time. When God establishes your steps, he also establishes your stability. You stop moving out of anxiety, start moving out of assurance. You stop reacting to life and start walking by revelation. You begin to sense God's hand turning obstacles into openings, pain into power, and delay into destiny. Today, you don't need a new strategy. You need a new surrender. You don't need to push harder. You need to trust deeper. Stop trying to make it happen in your own strength. Let God's favor establish your steps. Let his wisdom guide your choices. Let his presence order your priorities. The blessing you're chasing is already chasing you. It's just waiting for your obedience to catch up. So before you start your day, lift your hands and say, Lord, I surrender my plans for your purpose. I surrender my path for your direction. I surrender my ambition for your favor. Establish my steps today. Because when he establishes your steps, you'll find yourself walking into places you didn't plan, meeting people you didn't expect, and receiving blessings you didn't earn. That's the power of divine favor. It takes ordinary days and turns them into supernatural seasons. Let God's favor establish your steps today. Not tomorrow, not someday, today. Because when favor leads, success follows. When grace governs, peace reigns. And when your steps are established by God, no man, no storm, and no setback can stop what he's already set in motion. Favor begins where alignment begins. You can't walk in the fullness of God's favor while being out of sync with his will. God's favor isn't random. It's directional. It flows in the path of obedience, not convenience. Some people are praying for blessings while walking in the opposite direction of what God said. You can't ask him to open a door you refuse to walk toward. Favor doesn't chase rebellion. It follows obedience. When your heart aligns with God's heart, your life starts to align with his power. That's when things that used to feel heavy suddenly feel light. When opportunities that used to be hidden start revealing themselves. Because favor is not something you earn. It's something you position yourself for. You can't force favor, but you can create the conditions where it flows freely. Alignment is those conditions. It's when your thoughts, your speech, and your actions come into agreement with heaven. Think about this. If your car's wheels are out of alignment, no matter how strong the engine is, you'll drift off course. The same is true in life. God may have already given you power, talent, and opportunity, but if your spirit isn't aligned with his direction, you'll keep veering away from your purpose. That's why prayer and obedience are not religious habits. They are alignment tools. Every time you obey God's voice, you tighten the alignment. Every time you pray for his will, instead of your wants, you strengthen the alignment. Some people think favor means doing less, but favor actually empowers you to do what others can't. It's not a shortcut. It's a supernatural advantage, but that advantage only operates when you're in alignment. God can't favor a version of you that doesn't represent his will. The reason some doors haven't opened yet isn't because God said no, it's because you're standing at the wrong door. When you get back in alignment, the right door opens automatically. Alignment is about trust. It's saying, God, I don't just want what's good, I want what's right. I don't just want what's fast, I want what's divine. Because what you gain out of alignment, you'll have to maintain by stress. But what you gain in alignment, God sustains by grace. That's why favor isn't about getting ahead of others. It's about getting in step with God. When you walk in his rhythm, you don't have to compete, you don't have to compare, and you don't have to compromise. You simply flow in divine timing. So today, ask yourself, am I aligned? Is my heart where God's heart is? Is my time being spent where his purpose is leading me? Because favor doesn't visit confusion, it rests on clarity, and clarity comes when you stop asking God to bless your plan and start asking him to reveal his plan. When you get into that flow, you stop striving for results and start walking in revelation. That's when favor becomes natural. It becomes your lifestyle, not just a miracle moment. When favor begins through alignment, you won't have to chase validation or beg for recognition. God himself will confirm your steps. He will send people to help you, opportunities to lift you, and peace to sustain you. Because when your heart is aligned with heaven, everything in your life starts to align with success. The steps of a righteous person are ordered by the Lord. That means nothing about your journey is random. Every move, every delay, every detour is part of a divine sequence. You might not understand it now, but when God orders your steps, even what feels like a setback is actually a setup for something greater. The problem is, most people only want God to order the blessings. They don't want him to order the process. But the process is what prepares you for the promise. When scripture says your steps are ordered, it doesn't say your leaps or your jumps. It says your steps. That means progress in the kingdom of God is often gradual, not instant. We live in a world that celebrates speed, but God develops through stability. You may want to sprint, but God says, walk with me, because when you walk with God, you build endurance, character, and wisdom that sprinting could never give you. Every step he orders is shaping you for something you can't yet see. Sometimes God's ordered steps lead you into unfamiliar places. You thought the path to success would be smooth, but he led you through a storm. You thought favor meant easy, but God's order doesn't always look like comfort. It looks like calling. Don't mistake difficulty for disorder. Just because it's hard doesn't mean it's not holy. Some of the hardest seasons in your life are the ones where God is establishing the deepest roots in your character. You can't grow strong faith in easy soil. When you truly believe your steps are ordered, you stop panicking when plans change. You stop crying over what left, because if your steps are ordered, even subtraction serves your purpose. You realize that rejection is redirection, that closed doors are protection, that waiting seasons are preparation. God doesn't waste a single step. Even when you feel stuck, he's still ordering movement beneath the surface. What looks like stillness to you is structure to him. The word ordered means arranged, established, and set in sequence. That means your next step is not a mystery to God. It's already mapped out. Your job is not to create the path, it's to follow it. You don't have to understand every detail to trust divine direction. Sometimes God only shows you the next step, not the whole staircase. Because if you saw the entire journey, you might run ahead or quit before it begins. Faith is taking the next step when you don't know what comes after. So stop worrying about how far you have to go and start thanking God for how far you've already come. Each step you took in faith brought you closer to favor, closer to peace, closer to purpose. You may feel like you're moving slow, but slow progress in the right direction is still progress. And if your steps are ordered by the Lord, you can walk with confidence even through the valley, because order guarantees outcome. God is not just leading you, he's walking with you. His hand is on your movement. His grace is on your pace. And when you let him order your steps, he won't just take you where you want to go. He'll take you where you were meant to be. Divine timing requires trust, because God's timing rarely aligns with your impatience. You may be ready for the blessing, but the blessing may not be ready for you. You may be praying for the promise, but God is still preparing the platform. Trust means you don't rush what heaven is still arranging. When God promises something, he doesn't just deliver the result, he develops the person who's going to carry it. That's why sometimes he'll slow you down, not because he's forgotten you, but because he's fortifying you. We live in a culture obsessed with instant results, but God works through divine order, not human urgency. He's not moved by deadlines, he's moved by destiny. When you trust divine timing, you learn to rest instead of rush. You understand that delay doesn't mean denial, it means development. What looks like God holding something back is often him holding something together until you're ready to handle it. If he gave it too soon, it might bless your hands but break your heart. There are seasons when you'll feel like nothing is happening. You'll pray, you'll plan, you'll move, and still doors remain closed. But remember this, just because you can't see movement doesn't mean God isn't working. He often does his best work in silence when it looks like nothing is changing. He's aligning people, positioning resources, and adjusting timing behind the scenes. You're focused on the clock. He's focused on your capacity. And he will not let what's meant for you arrive before you're mature enough to manage it. Trusting divine timing also means learning to let go of control. You can't pray for God's will and then panic when he changes your schedule. Sometimes he'll interrupt your plan because your plan was too small. He'll delay something you thought you were ready for to give you something you didn't even know you needed. Every detour is divine direction in disguise. Every pause is protection from something that would have pulled you out of alignment. Faith isn't proven when everything happens fast. Faith is proven when nothing seems to happen at all. Can you still worship when the promise takes longer than you expected? Can you still trust when your prayers are answered with silence? That's where real growth happens. Because trust is not just believing that God can, it's believing that he will at the right time in the right way. His delays are strategic, not random. His pace is perfect even when it feels painfully slow. So instead of asking God when, start asking God, what are you building in me while I wait? Because waiting isn't wasted when you're learning in it. Every season of delay is shaping your discipline, your character, and your gratitude. And when the timing finally aligns, you'll realize the wait was worth it. Because the blessing will come without sorrow. The opportunity will come with peace. And the door that opens will never have to be forced. Divine timing requires trust because God sees what you can't. He's already at the finish line while you're still taking the first step. He knows who needs to meet you, what needs to shift, and how the pieces need to come together. So keep walking in faith even when you don't see the outcome yet. Because when you trust his timing, you'll always arrive right on schedule. His schedule, not yours. Favor turns effort into excellence because when God's hand is on your work, ordinary actions produce extraordinary outcomes. You can grind all day, you can hustle for years, but without favor, your results will always be limited by your own strength. Yet one moment of favor can accomplish what years of effort never could. Favor multiplies the impact of your obedience. It takes your natural and breathes supernatural results into it. Favor doesn't cancel effort, it enhances it. God's favor doesn't show up for lazy people, it shows up for those who are faithful. When you do what you can, God adds what you can't. That's the divine partnership of grace and diligence. You show up, you work with excellence, you stay consistent, and then favor steps in to amplify it beyond your imagination. People will look at your results and think it was your talent, your connections, or your timing, but you'll know it was nothing but the hand of God. Excellence isn't perfection, it's divine empowerment. It's when your work carries a weight and presence beyond your ability. That's why someone else can say the same words, but when you say them, something shifts. Someone else can do the same job, but when you do it, it leaves an impression. That's favor at work. It turns effort into influence. It's what makes your voice carry weight, your presence command attention, and your gifts produce fruit. You see, effort alone creates success, but favor creates significance. Success may get you noticed, but favor gives you purpose. Effort earns a paycheck, but favor leaves a legacy. When favor rests on you, what you touch begins to prosper. You don't have to beg for opportunities, they start to find you. You don't have to chase recognition. Excellence starts to speak on your behalf, because favor is not about striving harder, it's about working under divine endorsement. That's why you can't afford to separate faith from effort. Some people work without worship, and others worship without work. But true excellence is when faith fuels effort. When you say, God, I'm giving you my best and I'm trusting you to bless it, that's where divine acceleration happens. Favor begins to open doors that effort alone couldn't unlock. What used to take years starts happening in months. The right people begin to notice. The right opportunities begin to align. Things that used to be hard suddenly become smooth. Not because they changed, but because you changed. Because you're now walking under divine favor. Favor doesn't make you better than others. It makes you better than your old self. It refines your attitude, sharpens your focus, and elevates your standard. You begin to operate with a level of grace that can't be taught in classrooms or bought with money. Favor makes excellence effortless because God is co-signing your work. He's breathing on what you build. He's promoting you in rooms you haven't entered yet. And the beauty of favor is that it doesn't just bless what you do. It blesses who you become. As favor flows through your effort, it transforms your work ethic, your confidence, and your gratitude. You realize that your achievements are not just the result of sweat, but of grace. You stop saying, look what I did, and start saying, look what God did through me. So keep working, but do it with the awareness that favor is your secret advantage. Give your best, not because you're striving for approval, but because you're representing the one who gave you the ability to succeed. When favor meets effort, excellence is inevitable. What once felt like a burden becomes a blessing, and what once seemed impossible becomes your new normal. Because when God's favor rests on your work, every effort turns into excellence, every challenge becomes a testimony, and every outcome becomes evidence of His glory. Prayer activates direction, because prayer is not just communication with God, it's calibration to His will. When you pray, you're not informing God of your situation, you're inviting Him to align your steps. Prayer doesn't just change things, it changes you. And once you change, your direction changes. Every time you pray, you're opening a spiritual channel that allows heaven to download clarity into your spirit. The reason many people feel lost is not because God is silent, but because they've stopped listening. Prayer restores the signal between your purpose and His plan. When you begin your morning with prayer, you're not just saying words, you're surrendering your agenda. You're telling God, lead me before I move, guide me before I decide. Because prayer is not about convincing God to bless your plans, it's about discovering His. Most people make plans and then ask God to approve them. But true favor flows when you ask God to reveal the path before you start walking. That's how direction is activated, through submission, not control. Prayer turns confusion into clarity. You might not get every answer immediately, but you'll get peace. And peace is God's confirmation that you're facing the right direction. When you're anxious and overwhelmed, it's hard to hear God clearly. But when you quiet your mind through prayer, His voice becomes louder than your fears. That's why the enemy fights your prayer life so hard, because he knows a praying person is a guided person. A guided person doesn't wander aimlessly. They walk with intention. Direction doesn't come from ambition. It comes from revelation. And revelation is born in prayer. God can show you more in 5 minutes of quiet prayer than you could figure out in 5 years of overthinking. One word from him can redirect an entire season of your life. That's why you can't afford to skip prayer and expect clarity. Prayer is not a ritual, it's a strategy. It's how you download divine instructions for earthly execution. Every breakthrough begins with a conversation. Sometimes God won't change your situation through prayer. He'll change your strategy. You'll come out of prayer seeing things differently. What used to look like a wall now looks like a door. What used to look like rejection now looks like redirection. Prayer doesn't just give you strength, it gives you sight. It shifts you from asking why to declaring what's next. That's when you begin to notice divine appointments, connections, and open doors that were invisible before. Prayer activates direction because it puts you in rhythm with heaven. When you pray consistently, your spirit begins to discern when to move, when to wait, and when to pivot. You no longer chase opportunity. You're led by purpose. And there's a big difference between being driven and being directed. Being driven means you're trying to make things happen in your own strength. Being directed means you're following divine cues, trusting that every step has already been ordered. So when you wake up in the morning, don't start your day by checking your notifications. Start it by checking in with God. Say, Lord, establish my steps today. Show me where to go, who to speak to, what to pursue, and what to release. That prayer sets your spiritual GPS. And even if you take a wrong turn, his grace will reroute you, because a praying heart can never stay lost for long. Prayer activates direction because it repositions your heart to hear instruction. It shifts you from wandering to walking, from guessing to knowing, from striving to flowing. The moment you pray with faith, heaven begins to respond with guidance. And as long as you stay connected through prayer, your life will always move in the right direction. One step at a time, in God's perfect will, established. Don't chase. That's the difference between those who build their lives on purpose and those who waste their lives in pursuit. The world teaches you to chase success, chase status, chase validation. But God calls you to establish, because what's established by God cannot be shaken by man when your life is built on divine order. You don't have to run after what's meant for you. It will be drawn to you. Chasing is rooted in anxiety, but establishing is rooted in assurance. When you're established in purpose, you stop hustling for acceptance and start operating from identity. When you chase something, you admit you don't believe it's already within your reach. You act like what God promised is far away, when in truth, it's already inside you waiting to be revealed. Chasing makes you restless. Establishing makes you rooted. A person who's always chasing never has peace because the goalpost keeps moving. But when you're established in God's will, even if progress feels slow, you remain unshaken, because you understand that foundation is more important than speed. What you rush to build will fall under pressure, but what you let God establish will stand through storms. Establishing means letting God settle your spirit before he expands your territory. You can't sustain what you haven't stabilized. So before you ask God to increase your influence, let him strengthen your integrity. Before you ask him to enlarge your platform, let him deepen your patience. God can't establish something that's built on insecurity. You have to let him build your faith strong enough to handle the favor he's about to pour out, because the blessing you chase without foundation will become the burden you can't carry. There's a big difference between chasing opportunity and being positioned for it. When you chase, you're reacting to what you see. When you're established, you're responding to what you know. You know who you are, you know whose you are, and you know that favor follows faithfulness. You don't have to beg for recognition or compete for space. You just keep showing up, doing what's right and staying consistent, and God will make sure your name reaches the right ears at the right time. Establishment is when your obedience starts speaking louder than your effort. Chasing is fueled by fear, the fear of missing out, of being overlooked, of not measuring up. But faith never chases. Faith builds. Faith plants. Faith trusts that what's meant for you can't pass you by. When you live from that place of peace, you stop running in circles trying to force outcomes. You start walking in rhythm with God's timing. You understand that your part is the preparation. His part is the promotion. When he establishes you, he sustains you. You don't have to hold on so tightly, because what he plants, no one can uproot. Stop chasing what people have. Stop chasing approval, applause, or validation. Start establishing principles, discipline, and presence. Establish prayer as your first response. Establish faith as your foundation. Establish excellence in everything you do. Because the moment you start building instead of chasing, success begins to locate you. The favor that used to feel out of reach begins to flow naturally towards you. That's what happens when you let God establish your steps instead of trying to force your path. So today, make a decision to stop running after everything and start being rooted in something. You don't need to chase money when you're established in purpose. Money follows value. You don't need to chase recognition when you're established in excellence. People recognize what stands the test of time. You don't need to chase opportunity when you're established in obedience. Opportunity finds those who are ready. Let God establish your thoughts, your routines, your relationships, and your direction. Because once he establishes it, you'll never have to chase again. When you let God's favor establish your steps, your life begins to flow instead of fight. You stop striving to make things happen and start walking in the assurance that God already has. Every moment becomes intentional. Every step becomes divine, and every decision carries peace instead of pressure. You begin to realize that success without surrender is just stress in disguise. But success built on favor brings fulfillment, stability, and joy. The secret to a powerful life isn't speed, it's alignment. It's waking up each morning and saying, Lord, guide me, shape me, and establish me today. When you let God lead, favor begins to follow. What used to be hard becomes easy. What used to confuse you starts to make sense. Because his favor doesn't just open doors, it orders steps. And when your steps are ordered, you stop living by reaction and start living by revelation. You may not see it yet, but every delay, every disappointment, and every detour is still part of God's plan. His favor is arranging things behind the scenes that will soon appear before your eyes. So don't chase success. Be established in purpose. Don't worry about being first. Just make sure you're faithful. Because when you are faithful to the process, God is faithful to the promise. So as you go through this day, declare it with confidence. God, let your favor establish my steps. Lead me where my effort can't take me. Give me peace that outlasts pressure, strength that outshines struggle, and wisdom that outlives worry. When you move like that, you won't just reach success, you'll embody it. Because the favor of God doesn't just bless your path, it becomes your path. And when his favor establishes your steps, no force on earth can move you from the destiny he designed for you.